Defensive pistol instructors probably argue about the proper stance more than any aspect of the defensive pistol. Most of them think there's a certain way or certain position you have to be in to effectively employ a pistol in a defensive situation. The truth is, if you can only shoot from one stance or position, or you only train to shoot from one stance or position, you've got problems right from the get-go. Think of it this way. Fighting with a pistol is a martial art. It's not much different than boxing or MMA fighting. And if you've ever watched an MMA fight, you'll notice that MMA fighters switch positions, switch stances as the fight changes and the situation changes. And that's what you have to be able to do with a defensive pistol. So let's look at the two most common types of stances that firearms instructors teach and how we can move between those and where they're applicable depending on the situation. So let's start with the Weaver stance. The Weaver stance was codified by Jeff Cooper, who was the founder of Gunsight. And a lot of people misunderstand the Weaver stance. They think it's a bladed stance where you turn your support side shoulder toward the target and point the handgun across your body. Well, that's not exactly true. With the Weaver stance, the foundation is built on the legs. You want a fighting stance. You want a stance that if somebody comes at you and pushes you, you can withstand that impact. So you're bent at the knees, your knees are over your toes, and your shoulders are over your knees. In this stance, with a right-handed shooter, the handgun in the strong hand or your shooting hand, this arm is almost perfectly straight or slightly bent. The support hand is applied at the front of the grip with the support elbow bent. You're applying pressure forward with your shooting hand, and you're applying pressure rearward with your support hand. This elbow is tucked in low. It's not out like this. It's tucked in low, and it allows you to control hard recoiling handguns. Jeff Cooper built his modern technique of the pistol and codified the Weaver stance around the .45 auto cartridge in 1911. This stance will help you really control that recoil. Now, when it comes to the Isosceles stance, that is the stance that most competitive shooters use nowadays. And with the Isosceles stance, your feet are about the same, your knees are about the same, your shoulders are about the same. The difference is both arms are fully extended and both arms are locked. And you form essentially an Isosceles triangle between the gun and your two shoulders. Now, where do these two stances apply and which one should you use, or should you use something kind of in between those stances? Well, with the Weaver stance, that's kind of an erect stance. Your head's up, you're really maximizing your peripheral vision. With the Weaver stance, it's a great stance to use if you don't know what's going to happen, if you don't know what type of situation you're entering into, because you can really use your peripheral vision, your head's up, you're erect, you're looking around. With the Isosceles stance, you're more focused in on a target. You're not really too worried about what's going on over here or what might happen here. That is why most competition shooters use the Isosceles stance. When they step up to a stage of fire, they know that they have two targets here. I'm going to double tap this target. I'm going to double tap this target. I'm going to run to that spot. I'm going to shoot this target. So when they go to address those targets, they often address it in the Isosceles stance because they don't have to worry about anything else that's going on around them. They don't have to worry about a bad guy coming out of the back or a partner they're with coming up to help them. The difference with the Weaver stance, it allows you to exercise that peripheral vision more, but it also, with the Weaver stance, it's very good for doing other things. Like if you're holding a gun on a bad guy, you can access your cell phone with your other hand to call for help. You can also operate a light. You can also manipulate doors. You can move other people out of the way. The Isosceles stance, you're really locked in on the target. Now, some people really take the Isosceles stance to extremes, and they'll do what's called turtling. They'll get into the Isosceles stance, tuck their head down, and shove these shoulders up around their ears. Now, this really locks in and helps you control recoil, but it also gives you extreme tunnel vision. You can't really know or focus or be aware of anything that's going on around you. So ideally, when it comes to stance, what you want to do is apply the stance that best allows you to deal with the situation that's at hand. If you don't know what's going to happen, Start out in the Weaver style stance. When you find a target and focus on a target, then you could transition into more of an Isosceles stance to attack that target. So let's summarize shooting stance. Shooting stance is not how you shoot a gun. That's the position you fight from. It could be standing erect, it could be sitting in a car, it could even be laying on the ground. The way you shoot the gun is with the sight alignment and trigger control. But you need to find a stance that you can shoot from and you're comfortable with. But you also need to be able to adapt to various positions and situations and use a stance that best supports those.